Okay, so I would start off my session with Charles by basically just saying, "Hello, my name is Michelle. How are you doing today?" And just kind of ask that really open question, just like how I talked about last time in Sarah's. I think "How are you doing?" is a very good question because it allows kind of the client to get a sense of what to expect during the whole meeting where you're going to be asking questions to further the story and for them to give back their responses. So right after that, I would obviously go into talking about confidentiality. And basically, I would explain confidentiality is start off by asking Charles. So I'd say, "Do you know anything about confidentiality?" No matter if they say, "Yes, I do," "No, I don't," I would still say, "Okay, well, I'm just going to go over it really quickly." So confidentiality is basically what happens in this room. What you tell me in this room basically will stay here, and I cannot tell anyone else. There's only three main reasons as to how I would be able to give out your information and confidentiality would be broken. And that is self harm. So you're hurting yourself, abuse in the home, abuse that you know of that you mentioned here. I would have to report it. And if by law I have to give out any information, then I would obviously have to give it any information that you've told me. Besides that, there's only other one, sorry, only one other way that I would actually be able to give out information, and that is if you give me written consent saying I blank um, allow for this person to receive my information via me, and then I would be able to give out my information. And that's basically all about confidentiality.
You can call me Charles. My wife, Elmo. She talked to our doctor and he suggested you.
So, what brought Charles here today, and how would you ask? So, just by me personally seeing his body language and how closed off he's like looks, and also how he's talking, I can kind of assume that Charles is kind of uncomfortable in this situation, and this is probably one of his first times ever meeting a counselor. Um, because of this, I would definitely try my best to make Charles feel as most comfortable as he can, especially because we just opened the meeting. So I think in this case, like Charles, I would kind of take the extra step to kind of thank him for coming to talk to me, and kind of say something along the lines of like, "I understand, um, that coming and taking a step to come talk to me was a very big one, and I appreciate him for doing so." So I might say, for example, "Well, thank you for coming to talk to me and seeing me today. I know sometimes that taking the step to come in and talk to someone about your problems and issues you may be having is a very hard thing to do. And I just want to thank you so much for trusting me, that I can kind of support you through this. Is there any real specific reasons why you came to see me today?" And I would just kind of add that, "Are there any specific reasons you came to see me today?" Because that will kind of let Charles pick the way he wants kind of this counseling session to go. So depending on what he wants to talk about, he can kind of open with that, and we can start off with what's really bothering him.
I don't know what this is about. My son Adam, I don't, I, I don't understand him no more.
Okay, so at this point, I do know that Charles kind of wants to talk about his son and that he might be having some issues with his son. But because I don't know that much information yet, I would probably use an encourager here. And that's just to kind of say, or without words, kind of say, "I understand. Would you like to kind of go further about this?" Therefore, allowing Charles basically to continue explaining if he feels comfortable. So I might do something such as nod my head as an encourager, or I might even say, "Okay," in a sense that if he would like to continue talking about his son, he's fully able to, if he would like to change the subject, even though I believe he does really want to talk about his son in this instance. That is also an option.
He's just changed. That's all.
So just like the last time, I think I would just keep using encouragers, like nodding my head. At this point, we know that Charles is obviously wanting to talk about his son, and that how his son has changed, and that's something that's really on his mind and that he really wants to talk about. However, because since I don't have a lot of information and I believe just Charles is just going to keep on feeding in the information. If I just do an encourager, I would probably do an encourager, but I don't think I would do a vocal one. I think I would just make sure I kept eye contact, nodded my head, and just allowed for him just to keep speaking about what's really bothering him, which in this case, I believe it's his son and how his son has changed.
He's 19. He doesn't want to do anything with his life. He's running around with these wild kids. He's staying out late and sometimes not coming home. He's got earrings in both his ears, earrings in his nose. He's got tattoos. I don't understand him no more.
So a question that I might ask here is, are you close with your son? And I would just ask this question to see how strained really the relationship may be. And possibly this may even lead to Charles telling me why he isn't or is close with his son. Um, and why he's having such a hard time really understanding him.
I see things, that's all. That's the reason Elma
Alma
decided
decided.
for me to come in
Okay,
here and
well,
talk to you.
So at this point, I may just paraphrase back to what Charles, sorry, was saying about how he just seems to see things differently than his son, and how his wife Alma kind of told him to come see a social worker counselor, um, and just to paraphrase, it might sound something like, so you just see things differently than how your son sees it. And because of that, Alma or your wife decided that maybe the best thing for you was to come and just have a chat with me. And I would really just say this because it would let me know information, um, and help me kind of gather just to make sure what I'm hearing is correct about how his wife Alma wanted him to come see him and how Charles really just doesn't understand, and him and his son are just really having kind of this conflict about seeing eye to eye on so many things.
I don't think I belong here. I don't understand none of this stuff.
So a question that I may ask here is, okay, do you want to explain kind of why you feel this way, or why do you think you're here? Um, and I would just ask this question to kind of understand why Charles feels as though he doesn't really belong in a counseling office talking to someone like me, a social worker or a counselor. My goal of this question is to really just know that explain to kind of Charles that he isn't required to be here and he doesn't have to be here. He's not being really forced to be here, and share things if he's not comfortable. Although this all question also, I hope that Charles would kind of explain to me why he doesn't feel as though he should be here and why he believes we're here. So maybe we can work through that and maybe make a more comfortable and safe space where possibly would feel comfortable with sharing, possibly in the future or even sooner than that.
I don't think I can influence Adam no more. He's got his own mind. He's doing just what he wants to do. I can't do nothing for Adam.
So my question that I would ask here is, what makes you want to influence Adam, or why do you think you need to influence Adam? I would ask this question just to see why Charles wants to influence what his son is doing, and also possibly receive the information as to what it is about Adam that's making Charles kind of feel the need to influence and change what he's doing.
I came home Tuesday. Came in the house. The house smelled of smoke. So I went around the house looking, trying to figure out what was on fire. Got to my son's room and he was in there smoking dope.
So at this point, I would say something along the lines of, so what did you do when you saw your son in that situation? This would just allow me to learn more kind of about what happened in this story, And it would also kind of encourage, sorry, Charles to explain further on what happened about this situation and kind of what was his response to finding his son in this situation.
I put his ass out. Alma said I overreacted. Alma let him back in. Disrespects the house, disrespects his mother, disrespects me. Acts like my damn father.
So in this instance, I would say something along the lines of, have you talked about how you feel when he does these things? Um, Such as things kind of like consequences. Um, and is there kind of rules that he has to follow while he's living under your roof? Just kind of things like that. And the reason why I'd say this is because it kind of allows Charles to explain possibly why he has or he hasn't made these rules for his son. Um, and it'll also kind of let me know if there are consequences that were put into place, or are those just sort of arising as they kind of come.
I don't want to talk about my father.
So at this point, I think I would just use an encourager, such as saying, okay, and this is just due because I don't want to really push Charles about his father if he's not really ready to talk about that yet.
I've got two daughters. They've graduated from college. They got good jobs. They marry good men. He's the only bum in the family.
So at this point, I just summarize because this is in fact the end of our session, and I would say something along the lines of, so you came here today to talk about me, about your son, and all the hardships you're having with him, such as him hanging out with a bad group of people, altering his appearance, and even using some substances in your home. And you're just having a hard time really communicating with him because you want one sort of thing and he wants a completely different other thing. And you guys are really having a hard time seeing eye to eye. Um, and then I would finish that off basically with, "Is this correct?" And the reason why I just summarize is because, like I said before, it's the end of our meeting. I just want to make sure that I have all the correct information. This is the time where he could kind of correct me if I have some information that may be wrong or just a little bit off. And also, I'd summarize at the end of the meeting just because it would kind of point out key aspects that we've talked about today that we may want to talk about at the very start of our next meeting, and just important key points that we should possibly talk about another time when we have another meeting coming up, another counseling session. I am so sorry, or anything other. Okay, so the first question about body language, you can really see in this session, the counselor is very calm and he has a very relaxed body language. And we can really see that by the counselor being sitting back in his chair and keeping eye contact with Charles, even when his eye contact isn't really met. However, Charles is a very completely different story. Throughout the session, you can kind of see Charles being kind of closed off with his body language by doing things like crossing his arms and not keeping eye contact, and even at some point sitting on the edge of his chair, kind of like he's ready to leave. So I would summarize this session with Charles by saying that he's got some really tough issues with his son, and it's kind of a not seeing eye to eye issue. His son kind of wants to live his own kind of life, it sounds like, while Charles kind of wants his son to be successful, um, like his other two children. In the next session, I might talk about how Charles might be able to go about kind of talking with his son and having kind of that sit down, face to face conversation, and how he can deal kind of with these emotions when he's kind of getting out of control instead of doing things rationally, like kicking his son out of the house. So, in the next session, I might talk about, well, how can we deal when we're feeling stressed and when we feel kind of at our breaking point with Charles, so we can possibly find a better solution than kind of just losing our top. Lastly, just because Charles and Sarah are so different, I would say that Charles needs more of a direct counseling forum, which is kind of like um, where Charles can learn how to deal when he feels these certain emotions and kind of ways that he can cope with having these certain emotions. Where I feel with Sarah was more of she just needed really someone to talk to through all the emotions that she was having, because she didn't really want to talk to her family. Whereas Charles, um, you can tell that he really does love his family. He's just kind of upset with his son because his son isn't really taking the path of his other two children. And I feel as though Charles, instead of that counseling that Sarah needs, where they're kind of just there to sit and to talk through certain things, I believe that Charles kind of needs counseling in a way where he can find certain ways to cope with his emotions.